Scenes from a previous episode.
You have been transported. You did not come to church this morning. You have entered a time machine. This particular building is actually a machine not like any other. In this machine, you have gone to a different time and a different place. You're not even one group of people. You've been merged into one person, a lowly medical student. The place is Jerusalem Shock Emergency Room of Jerusalem Regional Hospital. The year is 33 AD. And I am a doctor. Not Dr. Doolittle, not Dr. Pepper, not even Dr. Seuss. I am Dr. Jonah, and I will be your tour guide today. My life changed 40 days ago when a man came into my emergency room that had suffered like no man had suffered. He was in the act of being crucified when an earthquake hit, and he was transported by a horse ambulance to this place. A good Samaritan had picked him up and brought him with Simeon of Africa. And I did my best to try to revive him, but he was too busy trying to care for other people, and he passed away. He died such a pure death, he could only have lived such a pure life. At that time, I had never expected what would happen over these next 40 days to happen. I'm going to bring you up to speed, so let's start where I left off. This common criminal's name was Yeshua. When he was crucified and died in my emergency room, as the procedure is common, because of a death in the emergency room, I had to call the medical examiner to see if he wanted to take the case, possibly do an autopsy. The ME declined the case. There was no question of the cause of death. I had never seen a more dead man in my life. Soon after that happened, we took the IVs out, we cleaned him up. We wanted to release the body to his mother Mary and John, who was there. But I was unable to do that because just at that same time, a whole crowd of people came in, religious leaders as well as people who were Roman soldiers. They were armed. They were intimidating. They were talking about chain of custody way before the OJ case. They wanted that body to be brought down and put in a morgue. They wanted guards to guard it. The Roman soldiers were laughing under their breath, but these religious nuts were serious as cancer. They wanted this body guarded. If they could have put an ankle bracelet on it, they would have. Like he was some sort of flight risk. The morgue was downstairs, underneath the emergency room. They locked it up. They put a big stone in front of his area. 2 Roman soldiers were kept guard. And then the religious leaders left. I had to leave too, because it was almost the Sabbath, and not just any Sabbath, it was almost Passover. I had to get home because my mother was going to say, "Where have you been?" I got back just in time, not allowed to travel past a certain time of day. There was my mother waiting at the door. My father had passed away. My mother, Ruth, and I lived with my uncle, Sheba, who was also known as Chet. We called him Uncle Chet. Apparently, my mother was a little upset. She thought I might be late, and this was the most important day of the year. You know how mothers can be, especially Jewish mothers. Either way, she had been making matzah bread all day. Now, Some of you goys probably don't know what matzah bread is, but essentially it's a cracker. It's a reminder of us in Passover that the feast that we were going to have got cut short because we had to escape Egypt. And so the bread didn't have time to rise. The leaven was not allowed to work. She had been making that, and please don't call it Syrian bread in our house because we don't like the country Syria. We're at war with them half the time once their country is founded. But she had the matzah bread all ready. I came in with my uncle, Chet. We were kibitzing. He was okay. He let me stay in the basement for free, pay off my student loans. Didn't bother me too much. He was a stickler. I kind of felt like I had to go to synagogue with him because he was some bigwig there. But I got a good chance to hang out and talk to him. He could be pig-headed at times. Now, please don't tell my mother that I use the word pig. I'm not allowed to use the word pig in the house because it's an unclean animal. So I could call him bull-headed or rock-headed, but not pig-headed. I wasn't allowed to speak pig Latin to the Roman soldiers. I wasn't allowed to say this little piggy went to the market, this little piggy went home. And we absolutely were not allowed to eat bacon. Matter of fact, Uncle Chet was a real stickler about that. He didn't even want me to touch a pig. I had this great idea to take a pig skin, wrap it in some feathers, and make a ball with it. He wouldn't let me do that. Football was set back 1900 years because of it. I had a nice time. We ate. Of course, I told him about my day. It had been an amazing day. How I met Yeshua. How we had a good time together. How we then were transformed. As I was telling him about the day, he got agitated. He says, I've heard of this Yeshua. He's from Bethlehem, the same town as us. His mother's cousin Elizabeth still lives down the street in the village. He's no good. He's a bad rabbi. If you want to call him a rabbi, have nothing to do with him. He said to me, Heath, for some reason he nicknamed me Heath. I don't know why he nicknamed me after a tuft of grass. He says, don't screw this up. I got you a job. Don't lose it. Whatever you do. I said I wouldn't screw it up. I went out from there. I had to run over to see my good friend Luke, who I was a roommate with in medical school. He was also back on break. My mother, of course, was listening to the whole conversation in the room in the back, grabbed me. She was greatly moved by the story of Yeshua. She showed me her what was supposed to be matzah bread, but it was all regular bread. She had told me she had put no yeast in the bread, not even a pinch, and that it had all risen, and that this matzah bread that had risen was a sign. She was crying, as she always was. I wiped her tear, kissed her, and ran off to talk to Luke. I had a good rest of the day. I had to be back in the emergency room, 0500, that's Roman soldier time, 5 o'clock in the morning, our time. The emergency room was dead. It seemed as though it was going to be another quiet day. The day after the Sabbath, maybe a few people ate too much. Maybe there'd be a little congestive heart failure there. But it seemed to be a quiet day when all of a sudden I heard a commotion below me in the morgue, of all places. I ran down to the morgue. As I was running down, a Roman soldier was running up. He looked like a schoolgirl being chased by a boy with a locust. I tried to talk to him, but he kept running. I got down to the morgue, and in the morgue there was a Roman soldier in the corner. He was shaking like a fig leaf in the wind. I tried to ask him, what's going on here? Who are you? What's happened? He says, my name is Carmen. I was doing my guard thing, and the stone that was there, guarding his body, the stone rolled away. It bounced a time or two. An angel stepped inside named Gabriel, says, who are you? If you're wondering Where Yeshua is, let me tell you, he's alive and well with resurrection power. The only other person in the room was Mary Magdalene. She was in a state of euphoria. She was just saying over and over again, he is risen just as he said. I was completely dazed and confused. I didn't understand what was happening. I was synthesizing the information like any doctor would, trying to understand what exactly I was seeing. When back run in these same religious leaders that had been there on Friday, and they took me aside immediately, and they said to me, now listen, I have an affidavit here. I want you to sign this, that you saw Mary, John, and the other disciples steal this body out of the morgue. I said, I didn't see anything. I just came here, and it's empty. I saw nothing. I can't sign that. They says, look, we know your Uncle Chet. He got you this job. You did terrible on your MCATs. You did lousy on your interviews. You'll get fired, and you'll get another job nowhere. You will be the cleaning lady in this place. Something came over me, something that I had never felt before, a boldness, a warmth, I don't know what. I said, you can't possibly fire me. And they said, oh, yes, we can. And I said, oh, no, you can't, because I quit. I took my white coat off. I threw it on the ground in front of them. I says, I'm not going to sign anything. Goodbye. Of course, when I walked out of there, I was remembering my Uncle Chet's words, do not have anything to do with this dead rabbi. I was pacing around Jerusalem. I bumped into Mary's husband, Cleopas. Now let me be clear about this. There's Mary, Yeshua's mother. There was Mary Magdalene. There's also Mary, the wife of Cleopas, that were all there. There's more Marys than a Catholic elementary school in this story, and I'm sorry for that. But there was just all of them there. And Cleopas, he was a follower of Yeshua. If you looked at him, you could tell another interest that he had. He was perfectly round. He used a hula hoop for a belt. I don't like to say that people are overweight, so he was under height by about 3 feet. He should have been as tall as Goliath for his weight. He told me he was still growing. And he was just one of these guys that was laid back, even in the middle of everything happening. And he said, listen, let's just go take a walk somewhere. Because I was pacing around, didn't want to go home. He says, I know this new chicken place in Emmaus. Now, I know that this sounds funny, but back then we didn't eat chicken. Recently, people started to. All chickens were used for is the goys used to have these chickens, roosters, fight each other. I mean, they're not a new animal. They've been around since they were waking Noah up on the ark. But while we were spinning dreidels, these goys were gambling, watching these chickens fight each other. Don't ask us what took us thousands of years. Somebody finally said, let's take a bite of this. Turns out they taste pretty good. So they opened this new place called Chick-fil-A. But they wouldn't allow one in Jerusalem because they had an advertisement that had a pig saying, eat more chicken. And they just said that pigs cannot be instructional because they're an unclean animal. And so the mayor of Jerusalem got reelected because he wouldn't have a Chick-fil-A in the place. The fact is, all the college kids and everybody around loved the food, but we had to trek it all the way up to Emmaus to go there. It was worth the walk. Cleopas needed the exercise. I needed to clear my head, so on we went to Emmaus. We were on our way to Emmaus when just suddenly it seemed like there was 2 of us and then there was 3 of us. A man appeared. He was a man that was different than any man that I had met. There was just something about him. And yet there was this familiarity. I know this man. We've felt that feeling before where you say, I know him. Matter of fact, it was so strong, I was so embarrassed, I couldn't ask him his name and where I knew him from, because I should know it. But there's something different about him. We started to talk about our favorite subject, what had happened, Yeshua, meeting him. And he started to talk back, and he started to instruct us. Now, I've always considered myself a little more Sherlock than Dr. Watson. I know Watson is the doctor, but I've had the power of observation, prided myself in it. I was looking him up and down. I could not place him, but he was dressed differently. He had a very long tunic for this time of the year, covering up his almost entire hand. He looked young but very old. I couldn't quite place him. We finally got up to where we were going. We wanted to meet up there. The manager was a friend of Cleus because he went there all the time, Emily. And we had also met her husband, this Greek Spartan named Evan, who was a recent convert there. And I was meeting a couple friends, Jack and Jill, but Jill didn't like to be called Jill because there's a nursery rhyme. You probably haven't heard it. Jack and Jill went up a hill to fetch a pail of water. So she went by Juliana. And but she was good at playing the piano, whatever that means. And so we were there, and we sat down to eat. And the second we sat down and the bread was broken, I recognized the third man. It was Yeshua. And Cleus recognized him at the same time, like when a thought comes to you, like when you speak at the same time and say jinx. I knew who it was. It was him. The second I knew who it was, and I opened my mouth to say, "You're Yeshua," he was gone. Psst. Completely gone. This was something that was inexplicable. I started to think back to what Mary Magdalene had said. I was trying to piece together what happened. My mood changed. All of a sudden, I felt like something was really happening here. We skipped a meal. We went back to meet up with the disciples. They were staying in this dank little one-room shack outside the city for fear of being arrested. We hurried our way over there to see them. Now, there was 11 of them. They were huddled in one place, and Tom, not that Tom, but Tom, one of the 11 disciples, said, "Okay, I've heard what you've told me, but I don't care what you tell me about this. I will in no way, shape, or form ever believe he rose from the dead unless I can put my fingers in his holes, unless I can put my fingers in his side where the spear went in. Otherwise, I just can't believe this nonsense." This kind of silenced Cleos and I, who were going to explain what had just happened, what we had just seen, what we had experienced. Suddenly, the air was filled with a strange and sweet perfume. Light came in from everywhere and drove shadows from the room. I looked around. The place was white as snow, pure as finest gold. It had the look of new. It had the look of old. I felt like I was home, but I felt so far away. Something inside me wanted to leave, fear. But something inside me had the urge to stay. Then a silence fell like none I've ever known. Suddenly, Yeshua appeared. He went over to Thomas. He said, "Put your fingers in my side. I'm here." His voice was like the thunder rolling through eternity. His eyes were brilliant. They were like the ocean. His face was like the sun. He looked beaming, altogether different. He stayed with us. He talked to us. Thomas had fell down on his knees. He picked him up. He said, "Thomas, it is I." Thomas was crying. He said, "My Lord and my God. My Lord and my God." Cleos and I were in the back. We were stunned. We said, "Who is this man?" Every fear I ever had melted into peace right then and there. A warmth came through my body. It changed me. And then I thought, I said, why? Why did he do that? Why did he come and show these wounds? My scientific mind watched and observed those wounds. They were no longer jagged and bloody. They were no longer foul. They were somehow present but healed. But not like scar either. It's just that light came through them. And Thomas did that. And I realized that these wounds had changed. They were no longer when I saw him a short while ago, last Friday, in my emergency room. The wounds of his death, they were a trophy of his victory. I saw them differently because he was showing them differently. Probably you've seen a soldier with a gash on the face, a police officer with a mark, something that happened to them in the line of duty, a badge of honor, not something in the back from retreating, from being a coward, but from something from running into the fire, into danger, something that happened to them that healed but was a mark of honor. Healed was a mark of something that they would proudly show. It wasn't the disfigurement. It was, this is how much I protect those who I love. And then Luke and I were talking later. How is it that Yeshua had overcome death? How could it be that? And this body of his that was strangely different than any other body I had seen. We started to think about things and came up with 3 reasons, 3 explanations, not theories, not competing theories, but 3 parts to the story. Part 1 is Yeshua was innocent. He was an innocent man, sinless, flawless. And so he could not die. Yes, death could put its stinger in him. But death had never stung an innocent man before. Death had never tried to kill an innocent man. When death stuck its stinger into an innocent man, death inhaled its own poison and so died. And this new Yeshua, this new body, it wasn't just that he was innocent, he was blameless and blessed. See, previous to him, from the beginning of time, all men were under a curse. They were cursed by what they had done. And being under that curse, they were unable to, when death stung them, survive the sting. But this Yeshua was blessed. He was blessed of all. And so the sting, the venom, the poison could have no permanent effect on him. And then the third and biggest reason of all, I realized that day that Yeshua had life inside of him. Life not given from someone else. Life not given from his Father. Life of his own. He had his own life. He had his own life in him. So when death stung Yeshua and sucked his blood, fire meet water. Remember, in the ER, the blood and water came from his side. The blood for the forgiveness of our sins, and the water to extinguish the consequences, the fire of death. Fire seems overwhelming. Fire seems invincible. Fire seems all-consuming until it meets water. Water extinguishes fire. Life extinguishes death. Light extinguishes darkness. Death stuck its stinger into life, and so died itself. Where, O death, is thy sting? And Yeshua, who I now know is the Messiah or the Christ, wears his wounds as a symbol and as a crown of suffering having meaning in life. Many centuries from now, knights will come about, and they will be tapped with a sword on their head and on their shoulders and knighted. And that sword, for those of us who follow Yeshua, is the sword of suffering. Suffering being the path to a new life, the resurrection. I saw the resurrected body of Yeshua. He ate food, but had no need for food. He walked around among us, had a physical body, but did not need to obey the physical properties. He was not bound by gravity. He could walk through walls. He was altogether different. And now it's been 40 days. And with those 40 days, he said he's going back to his Father, and he's preparing a place for us. The carpenter is building a great big home for us. And he's not going to leave us orphans. He's going to send us the Spirit. He said for us to wait in Jerusalem until the Holy Spirit comes. And so we're here today for his send-off, his ascension. And even now, I see the Lord I see the Lord high and lifted up, rightfully adorned. The train fills the temple. He says, all power on heaven and earth has been given to me. He says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. I am coming back for my bride. I'm not skipping in on a donkey this time. I'm coming on a great white horse. I'm coming to bring a new life, a new heaven and a new earth. I will correct and remake every wrong. Even so, Lord, come. Thanks be to God. Amen.